Welcome to Real Estate Hustlers Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Appleman, founder and CEO of Appleman Properties. Today we're joined with Ashley Abbott, a Marine and Iraq War vet, holds a business degree and master's in IT management. Ashley owns 45 rentals in Kansas City, specializes in creative finance, and offers investing services throughout KC and KC Home Offers. Ashley, we appreciate you coming on the show today. If you could let the listeners know a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Josh, for having me. So I grew up in Kansas City, KC native, little town of Buckner, and then went in the Marine Corps right after high school, stationed in Southern California, Okinawa, Japan, Kuwait, and Iraq. I got out of there in 2005, got into the mortgage business for a couple of years. It was really good. And then that tanked out really fast by about 2007. And then I moved back to Kansas City and ended up starting a family. Got three awesome kids, 14, 12, and 8 years old. And so I spent a lot of time just hanging out, kind of stay-at-home dad. My wife had a pretty good job. And I had a nice pension from the service. So just raised up my kids for literally about 10, 12 years. And then my youngest, when he was 6, maybe he was 4 or so, I was thinking, all right, he's going to be starting school soon. I need to get out there and start doing something exciting. And I was ready to get back in the workforce. So I started going back to college. I went to Golden Gate University in San Francisco to get this master's in IT management. And I kind of realized I'm more of just a technology nerd. And I really just didn't want to do IT work as a career. And I always kind of had a passion for real estate, just kind of following the trends and stuff. And then I woke up one morning and just said, I'm gonna start a real estate business. And my son had just started kindergarten in the fall of 2021. And so I went to the courthouse steps with a buddy of mine, and we went half and half on a fix and flip that we picked up for 90 grand. And we ended up turning that in about 2 weeks. And we made about 10,000 a piece on that. Definitely not anything exciting for a fix and flip.
It's a confidence booster, though.
It was, yeah. We realized we could do that pretty quick, and I did 2 more houses with him, and it turns out I just have a lot stronger work ethic than my partner did on that, and I made a few banking relationships, and I learned what hard money was and how to get fix and flip loans, and you can give a lot less money to the lender than doing a 50-50 partnership with somebody. Typically with a lender, we would end up giving 25 to 35% of the gross profit to the lender versus if I went 50-50 with a partnership. So I went out on my own pretty quick after the third flip. And so
where are you finding these flips at? Where are you finding the properties?
So at the time I was just, I was looking on the MLS, and I was just driving around looking for distressed houses, and I knock a few doors. I didn't even know what wholesaling was at the time. I didn't know there was like all these off-market channels for finding properties. And so I just knew about the county auction. And so, but the only way you can do that is with cash. So, and I had a little bit of money. I had taken a loan out I was working with, but after keeping the first 2 houses or so, I was already realizing I was going to run out of money pretty quickly. And so I started fix and flip a couple, and then I would keep one. And then after a year, I had accumulated about 4 BRRRR strategy properties. And then I had listened to Bigger Pockets all the time. So when I was traveling back and forth to college or going on a walk, I'd always have my earbuds in, listening to David Green and Brandon Turner talking about the BRRRR strategy. And one day, Pace Morby came on and started talking about creative finance and subject to. I'd never heard of any of that stuff before. And so pretty much I learned that you can go to a seller and just say, hey, let me take over your mortgage payments, transfer the deed of the property into my name, the warranty deed, but you leave the deed of trust or the mortgage in the seller's name and just take over those mortgage payments. So as soon as I learned that, it just clicked to me that I could scale infinitely faster than trying to grind it out doing a BRRRR strategy for several months or a fix and flip. That if I could just start doing creative deals, negotiating with sellers, finding people with pain points that maybe they weren't money motivated to get cash in their pocket today, and they would be okay just receiving payments, that I could get into a house with next to nothing. And so at that point, I kind of learned about creative, learned about wholesaling. I learned what skip tracing is, which, you can just look up a property address, find out the owner's name, find out their phone number, their email address. And
Like,
so
where would you go to do that? Like, what kind of website do you use?
there's quite a few. PropStream is really popular. Batch Leads is popular. Deal Machine is fairly popular. And a lot of those now, 2 years ago, it would cost 10 to 12 cents per skip trace on most of these services. But now, majority of them have gone to a flat fee, anywhere from paying $100 to $500 a month. And you can pull a list, from 10,000 to 100,000 leads all at one time, and you can target your own criteria. So for me, with trying to find creative finance deals, which the subject to it just means basically buying the house subject to the liens or the loan that's already in place. So to find those properties, I would search a list for homeowners that either bought or refinanced their house between the years of 2018 to 2022. Actually, I stopped in April of 2022, and so
Why is that? Why is that your cutoff month?
well, what happened? Anybody that's kind of been in real estate and listening is right around April, May of 2022, interest rates just started shooting up like crazy. So we had this from 2018 to early 2022, these 2 to 3% interest rates, some of the most historical lows that we've ever had, in the last 100 years. And so, and for me, spring of 2022, I was flipping a couple of my first houses, and the rates, the first few that I did BRRRR strategy, I got a 4.5 and a 4.75 on an investor rate. And by July, I was getting 8.3%. So and conventional loans were at like 6.8, or 7. So I decided that I would research houses that either bought or did a cash out refi from 2018 to 2022, because they had low equity, most likely, and they had some of the best interest rates ever. So if you're going to buy a house and take over somebody's loan, for instance, if the house is worth 200, but they only owe $100,000, you have to figure out, how to get them that other 100 grand. So do I want to go to try and talk a seller into letting me finance 100K in equity? Or do I want to find a seller that has 10,000 in equity and I can just give him 10,000 cash and take over his $190,000 loan with a 200K purchase price? So the window of houses that have less equity in them, there's a less barrier to entry to negotiate a subject to or seller finance deal. It's those, we call them a hybrid. You would subject to the mortgage, and then you would seller finance the equity on payments.
Where are you getting the 10 grand? Because 10 grand times 100 whatever, it just keeps adding up. So how do you keep
Yeah,
filling the
so
bucket
I'm
up?
constantly running out of money. So I would buy these subject twos, but I was also still doing fix and flips. So on average, we would make 25 to 35,000, maybe 38,000 on our fix and flips we target 180 to 220 ARV in the KC metro area.
Nice.
That's kind of like starter home rentals, cash flow really well in that range. So it would give me an exit for an investor to buy it, or somebody looking for a starter home or a little bit nicer than that. And I would take the profits from the fix and flip, and I would go buy one or two subject to deals, because at this point, instead of doing BRRRR strategy, still doing a BRRRR on a house with an 8% interest rate, there just isn't enough cash flow there, and I didn't want to leave 30,000 in equity in a house that brings me $100 or $200 a month. And by the time one water heater goes out, you lose your whole year of cash flow. So I would take my $30,000 profit from a fix and flip, and then I would go inject that into a subject to deal. I'd give the seller 5 or 10 grand up front. In some cases, I would give them nothing up front. They would want to move like really fast, because they got a new job offer, or maybe they had a relative that needed some care that lived out of state. And so they would just finance the equity. And I'd pay $200 to $400 a month on $30,000 or $40,000 in equity on these deals. And the incentive for them was great, because I would have a sales pitch that, hey, we could put this on the market and list it. I do have listing agents, but you're going to pay 5 to 6% in commission. And then you're probably going to pay 2.2% in seller concessions, is kind of a national average of, hey, pay some of my closing costs. Let me pay my home warranty. And then on top of that, you have title, which is close to 0.75%. You're looking at probably $1,200 in title work a lot of times. And maybe they want a new water heater, or the inspection brings up some things, and or it sits on market for 3 months. Especially in today's market, days on market are really pushing up. So I could go to a seller and say, if you sell it on market, it's going to take a few months. You're only going to get 91 cents on the dollar, best case scenario after all commissions and everything. Or I can give you a cash offer, but typical investor cash offers are 70 to 75 cents on the dollar. And this is a nice house, and that's probably not the best opportunity for you. So what I can do is, if you let me buy it on some creative terms, I will give you the best price of the best comp in the neighborhood we can find. So I'll give you 100% of your value. You can pack 2 to 3 suitcases, walk out the door. I'll get a dumpster for anything else. You don't have to worry about that. I'll buy it as is. I'm going to do my due diligence and an inspection to make sure I'm not missing any huge stuff here, but I'm not going to ask you to fix anything. All I want is to take over this nice, juicy 3% interest rate, because it's going to let me cash flow and put a renter in here. And so we service a lot of loans like this. And if letting me buy like this, it lets you move on to your next chapter immediately. And we'll pay you your equity on payments, anywhere from $150 to $400 or $500 a month on the equity. And we've structured those for 5 years, 8 years. I did a deal that we structured 90,000 on the equity over 27 years at $400 a month at 3% interest rate. And we've done seller finance at 0% for 180 months on some deals too. So
That's huge.
it's really just listening to what the seller's needs are. And if cash isn't an immediate need, if it's just solving a problem like timing, speed, it works really well. Also, with creative finance, you can always let the seller win on price. Like, how many times do you go in to to negotiate a deal and somebody is really fixed, set on a price. And if you let them win on price, I can win on terms. So if I'll give them their price, but it has to be on a set of terms that can allow me to actually cash flow. So I'm basically buying cash flow streams with this by taking over houses with 2, 3, 4% interest rates.
What has been what's been some experiences that you've went through that you weren't expecting, negative experiences, but now that you know you would never do it again?
Oh boy. So one thing with these creative deals I realized, as opposed to a BRRRR strategy, is you're leaving all the money in the deal. So if I'm taking over something with a 3% rate, I'm really buying it to get those terms. So if it needs a roof and a water heater and new flooring and maybe I have to do foundation work and I end up putting 25,000 in repairs in this house, I really don't have any way to get that back out unless I did a refinance. And at that point, it takes away a lot of the advantage of going creative on that, because a lot of the time I'm buying those at full retail. So I usually try and look for these creative deals that are more turnkey. And if it does need the work, I'll still try and buy it on a creative term, but I'll make sure that I buy it with enough equity in the deal that I could put my own money into it and then maybe turn around and flip it or refinance it. That can be a good opportunity instead of maybe paying for hard money up front on, 100,000 purchase and 30,000 in renovation. If you could cash flow the renovation only or use private money for that and then just get seller finance for 3 to 6 months there, now I'm only paying, 12% hard money debt on renovation funds. And then I can refi out of that deal, flip it, BRRRR it, something like that. So
So would you say doing more due diligence on possible repairs before just taking over a mortgage?
absolutely. I can tell you, a year ago, I bought 2 houses on seller finance that had 8% interest only terms. And, 8%, that's not a great rate, but there was nothing out of pocket. So I got these with nothing out of pocket, and they're 2-bedroom houses. The payments were $400 each house for the interest only payment. And in that market, I can put a housing voucher tenant in there for $11.50 a month.
Yeah.
So numbers wise, it looked like great cash flow. Well, what I didn't realize is one of the houses was a hoarder house. And so I only got one viewing of that house, and I missed a $16,000 foundation job because it was so cluttered. I didn't take a deep enough look. And so that really kicked me hard, having to take care of that and then some other maintenance on that deal, that it kind of put me upside down on that house. So just because the terms look good, you really need to still pay attention to what your renovation costs are. Don't get too wound up in a zero entry fee, because the deferred maintenance, could be catastrophic if you're not.
And on the seller's end, it's like, well, I gave you zero, you had zero out of pocket. And I mean, it's kind of like gotcha, but
Oh, and you know what? The company that did the foundation work, they had a bid for that house 5 months earlier,
yeah.
and the seller knew all about that foundation work. And it was an as is, a wholesale deal, so it's they don't really you don't really have to disclose, but that's part of why they were trying to offload that. Didn't care about any today money. They just wanted that fixed price. So
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's what the game's about, though. You get your wins, you get your losses. It's just main thing is staying in the game.
yeah, I can tell you that some of my biggest losses and the zeros I've taken are some of the most valuable deals I've done, because it'll keep you from making that same mistake again. You pay once for your mistakes, and you try and learn from that. So even if you take a 0, acknowledge it as a win because it's going to help you in the long run to do better.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. 45 doors, so that's an accumulation. That's good, and everything's going cash flow positive. What about multifamily? What's your is it all single family predominantly?
I have, let's see, I have 5 duplexes and 1 fourplex, and then the rest are all single families.
What does the horizon look like on multifamily? Are you able apply the same techniques into a larger asset?
I preferably like to keep doing more of the small multifamily. They're pretty easy to get into. The cash flow is better overall. I would like at some point to maybe cash in my chips and get a 16 unit apartment building, start moving up into stuff like that.
Yeah,
I like the idea of the valuation of the property being more around the net operating income
yeah,
versus, hey, what did the house next door sell for? Being able to increase the cash flows and the operating income to increase the value is really exciting proposition to me for value add. So it's definitely a market I want to tap into. I think it is difficult to break into that once you get going. It's only been 3.5 years for me now in real estate.
but you've got the wins are in your sale for sure. 45 doors within 3 years, and then yeah, graduate to multifamily. You still have 4 walls, except you've got say 48 separate units in those 4 walls. Operating expenses go down. You've got economies of scale, um, and your cash flow should spike. But the main thing, like anything else, is you've got to get your foundational elements put in place, your learning blocks, which you've done, and plus you've applied a creative structure, which gives you an infinite way to scale. It's but you could break out of the traditional set. Now it's full on. It's go time.
Yeah, it definitely gives you having more entry and exit paths is great. And I usually never buy any deal that I don't have at least 2 or more exits on. And so I think um, also with real estate, I've continually trying to find more revenue streams. So uh, with a lot of the sub twos and BRRRRs, we're always leaving some money in that. So I picked up wholesaling last year, probably a year and a half, and I've been doing some wholesaling as well to generate income. And then this most recent year, we've started doing DSCR lending as well. And we do a little bit of consulting and some transaction coordination for these creative deals, contract writing and docs like that. So
Yeah.
any way we can support services around real estate, I try and monetize that so we can keep having money to add doors. I'd like to hit 100 here at some point. I've got a 5-year plan to just grind as hard as possible,
Yeah.
and then maybe pump the brakes and reevaluate at that point.
What systems are you using to manage your rentals?
Right now, so I self-manage everything. I have 2 people on my team that do all of that stuff for me, and we use software. It's called Door Loop,
Okay.
and it's worked really well for us. I think we pay $150 a month for that, but it has payment service built in. It has bookkeeping built in. It holds all the documents. We can write the leases. We can get the leases signed, and so it's kind of a all in one stop. I think we just saw an ad or a meme or something about it once, or maybe a radio ad even on a Bigger Pockets, and we've tried a few. We did Stessa. We've done a Veil. We started with a Veil. It's really cheap, about $5 a month per account. It's great if you're really small time. And then we had moved to Stessa, and I know people that have had pretty decent results with that. And then Door Loop is a little bit more robust. We've graduated to, but I know there's some good ones out there. Probably this has just worked pretty well for us.
Yeah, and we started out at with Buildium, and then
I have
we
heard about that too.
yeah, but I think it's comparable to Door Loop, and then Appfolio is where we're at now, which Appfolio is good. And I think the next one would be like a Yardi, but that's 2,000 units, and that's enterprise grade, and we're not there yet, but got goals. So yeah, so 100 units within the next 5 years, self-managing, that's good. Get past third-party property management. Um, are you still doing fix and flip? Still looking for the deals to buy at the right price and fill the cup up and buy more rentals?
We are so the wholesaling really is just a byproduct of me constantly hunting on
Yeah.
acquisitions. I've got a couple of cold callers. We have a cold calling virtual assistant, a bookkeeping virtual assistant, an IT virtual assistant, and then a lead managing virtual assistant that kind of oversees all of that and does follow-ups. And so we do the cold calling. Majority of those we're keeping for ourselves when we have a deal. Occasionally we wholesale one out. And then the fix and flips, this past year I only did, I think I did 4 in 2024, which is down from the previous 2 years. But now I'm starting to just hire turnkey general contractors that can see the whole project through. Before I was doing everything myself. I mean, I would hire in all of the HVAC and the plumbing and the countertops and stuff like that. But I would manage a crew myself. I wasn't swinging the hammer.
But managing the
The
crews,
first 10 renovations, I was in the house swinging the hammer. But now I'm dealing with the management and the wholesaling and just
too much.
so many irons in the fire in the lending now. So pretty much it's mostly office stuff and doing a lot of networking events and stuff. Is really, that's one of the best places you can find deals, is go to all your local meetups. We've got so many here in Kansas City that I think I buy or sell a deal probably 1 out of 3 meetups I've gone to. Like, I've ran the KPIs on that for last year, and we crushed it on just making new relationships at different kind of meetups. So
A different type of energy too, meeting face to face and meeting with people in the same industry. So it's definitely worth it.
absolutely.
Cool. So Ashley, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, work with you somehow and create some value, how can they reach out and get a hold of you?
I'm pretty active on Instagram at Ash Buys Homes, and also on Facebook. It's just Ashley Abbott. You can probably find me on there. There's so many active real estate Facebook groups. I think it's a pretty huge
Yeah.
hub for finding deals. And then we've got, you can call our business office line too, is 816-334-8231. And so any of those channels, like I said, I try and do a decent amount of stuff on social media. I'm always getting back to people. I want to collaborate on deals. I know a lot of contacts here in Kansas City, and supposedly we're supposed to be one of the top 10 investor markets in the country for 2025. So
Nice.
we have good cash flows out here. There's a lot of stuff on market, and
Let's partner up on some multifamily. Find a
dude,
big
let's go.
complex. I'm ready, man. That's if the market's popping, we need to start looking. So cool, Ashley. Definitely appreciate all the nuggets you've given us. I appreciate your time. Look forward to talking to you here soon and following you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks.